Hi, I'm Janice Smarter Country Living, and I have a question for you today. Do you all know of anybody that when they were a baby, they were passed through a horse's collar to cure them of an ailment? Well, you do now, because I was. My mom told me about that one day. It was in the 1980s. They always came out to the house on a Saturday and spent the night because they wanted to visit their grandbabies. And I can remember it now. She was sitting in the lazy boy, and I don't know what brought the subject up, but she looked at me and she said, "Do you know when you were a baby, you were passed through a horse's collar?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, we was down at Mom's house, my grandma's house, and we passed you through a horse's collar. Said you had something wrong with you. The doctors didn't know what it was, and they tried to cure you, and they couldn't. So that's what we did. We went down to Grandma's when we came back from the hospital, and we put you through a horse's collar." Now, you can find a little bit about this on the internet, but not a whole lot. And but really, this was done like in the old days, like in the 1800s and maybe the early 1900s. But I was born in the 1950s, which, I'm old, but I'm not that old. And it just really surprised me. But I wasn't into this kind of stuff back then, and I didn't really ask her any questions. I sure wish I did. But, so she said that's what they did. And she said that, well, on the internet it says that they did that to babies a lot when they had thought they had liver grown. And that's something to do with the liver, like it was maybe attached to the ribs or was enlarged or whatever. That was one of the cures they had for it. Well, this here is a horse's collar. And like I said, they would pass a baby through a horse's collar to cure him of this. Okay. Now, I don't know what was wrong with me. I asked my mom, asked one question. I said, "Well, what was wrong with me?" And she said, well, they didn't know, but she said she thought it had something to do with my neck. And, like I said, we never talked about it again after that. But I've got a lot of old pictures, and I've got a lot of old papers. Daddy kept everything. And here's a picture of me when I was probably 2 or 3 months old. You see the little baby Mom's holding in her arms? That's me. It's Daddy and my 2 other sisters. And I look awful frail and sickly, I think. And my neck is, my head's just hanging back. So I don't know if this was during that, well, I know it's during this time period because I was just a little baby. But, and also, I found this receipt. Like I said, Daddy kept everything. Here's a receipt from Charleston General Hospital. And if you notice the date, late September to early October, 1954. Well, I was born in June 1954. So I was in the hospital for over a week. And they ran these tests and everything. And apparently they didn't find out what was wrong with me. And they sent me home. If you also noticed what the bill is, it would be nice to be in the hospital for over a week, wouldn't it? And the bill only be like $150. But anyways, so that there, kind of proves what Mommy was saying. And later on, I asked Daddy about it. And Daddy said he didn't know anything about it. I'm thinking he was probably at work, and Mom went down to Grandma's, and they did it. And she didn't even tell him about it, because he probably said, "You're crazy, what'd you do that for?" But I did find somebody who remembered it finally, and it was my oldest sister. Shirley, she's 7 years older than I was, and she said, "I remember that." She said faintly. She said, "I remember being down to Grandma's house inside. There was, a bunch of people around, and they passed you through a horse's collar." So she remembers it. That made me happy, somebody else remembered it. But like I said, that's an old-timey cure, and I bet you don't know anybody who that was done to. I mean, if you do, tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story about it, or if you were. But, it's just a neat thing. And my grandma, she was born in the 1890s, 1891. She was very old-timey, very superstitious, and they believed in stuff like that. They really did. And Grandpa, he had certain abilities. He could do things. He died about 6 months before I was born, though. I never met my grandpa. I can tell you about him maybe in another video, the things he did and stuff. But I just thought this was interesting. And if you liked this post and you thought you learned something, and you might want to hear other things like this, you might like it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. But yeah, I was passed through a horse's collar when I was about 3 months old, and that was in the 1950s.